everybody, and welcome to Bucs Bounty, the weekly Pirates podcast where we talk about everything Buccos. This week we got somebody different, a little shakeup. Michael McHenry, he's out of town. He's on vacation doing fun stuff. So instead, Jordy Mercer joins the show here on Bucs Bounty. Jordy, thank you so much for being with us. Been here. You're going to be here for about a week doing pregame, postgame show covering the Pirates. Let's just start with, you're out of town. You come back into town. You obviously have to do a bunch of research, catching up basically. What have you seen from the Pirates? We're recording this right after the All-Star break, a little time after the All-Star break. We've had one series against the White Sox that did not go well at all. And now we're playing the Tigers as we record this. Jordy, what have you seen? What are you looking for the second half from the Buccos?
Yeah, so just from the outside looking in, not being, around like you guys are, we haven't found that consistency yet. It seemed like we get it on a couple good runs, a few game winning streak, I should say. But we just haven't found that. You know how it is, Steven, where that pitching, hitting connection all works together, right? Sometimes the hitting is, sometimes the pitching is. Pitching's been pretty consistent all year, to be honest with you, but just the hitting's been a little bit inconsistent at times. So we just haven't seemed like we haven't put it all together for a stretch run yet.
Yeah, we saw that really, really good homestand right before the Buccos go on the road going into the All-Star break. And we had 6 games in a row where the pitching and the hitting all worked together. As somebody who played on playoff teams here in Pittsburgh and then played on teams that were not playoff teams here in Pittsburgh, what do you think that difference is? How do you get to that consistency?
I mean, that's the name of the game, isn't it? I feel like.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody wants to be consistent as possible, but I don't know. It just seems like they haven't hit their stride. I think, back on our teams, when we had those playoff teams, it just seemed like we would never lose. I mean, we still lose 5 or 6 or whatnot, but we'd always get it turned around relatively quickly and get it back on the right track. And it was all about winning series, as I remember that growing up or just coming through the system and kind of being a young guy. In the league, it was about winning series. That's all we got to do is take 2 to 3, take 3 to 4, whatever it is, split, don't ever get swept, things like that I think, it adds up throughout the course of the year. And it just seems like they haven't been able to win series. They'll win game 1 or whatever and then lose the last 2 or just can't finish out winning the series at the end of the game. So for whatever it is, I don't know. We just got to find that consistency and guys was getting hurt. Obviously, the lineup wasn't consistent at times. Right. Having Nicky G back, I think, helps put that in the middle of the lineup too. But I think there's just numerous things that can be going to help this team play better.
One more question, just about kind of the way that the season works out. I've always thought that you need to beat the teams that you are supposed to beat, right? That's how it's the same thing as a hitter, right? You guys would always talk about, hey, you get your hits against the 4 or 5 starters, right? Those are the guys that you want to try to feast on. The 1-2s, sometimes you got to kind of take your hits and do what you can just to win those ball games. And I think that playing against teams can be similar, right? I think the best teams, what they do throughout a season is they very consistently beat the teams that they need to beat. And then when you have a series against, let's say, the Tigers or the Cubs, teams that are right at the top of baseball, that's when you got to make sure that you can at least try to take one. And if you win a series, that's great. But what we've seen from the Pirates a little bit, like, for example, that series against the White Sox, not taking business against a team that we all feel they should beat. Is there something to that? Do you want to, as a player, would you like to have your team focusing on that? Like, let's beat these guys? Or do you want to just kind of treat everybody the same?
Well, I mean, you try to be consistent throughout the year. I think that's the number one thing. But I think there's a couple things. You want to take care of your home field. I think we talked about this before, you and I have, is you're being comfortable at home. You sleep in your own bed in front of your fans. You know the routine at home. Like there's a lot of consistency there of being at home and being in a good spot. So I think that's first and foremost. And then the other thing, like you said, is when you face good teams, they're good for a reason. It's probably because they have either a couple dudes on the mound or their back end's really good, either or, the back in the bullpen, or they got some dudes that are MVP like caliber players in their lineup. And so if you can take care of the teams that maybe aren't as good and, like I said, win those series, and then sneak up on a good team and, get a series here or whatever it is, split a series with another top team in the division, whatever it might be. But I think you have to take care of your home games in front of your home crowd first, and then take care of those games, like you said, because it's a long season. We know this, right? It's a grind. And so you're going to have some ups and downs. You're going to have some low moments. But if you can try to stay consistency and, like you said, beat those bottom of the barrel teams that you can take care of. And then if things don't go well at the top, or they do, that's just an add-on bonus. And then you look up at the end of the year like, hey, man, well, we got a couple here and there and whatever. And that's how our record ended up being, pretty good, or over 500 or whatever it is in the playoffs, things like that. But I think you figure out how pretty good you are around the middle, of summerish, somewhere around there, pretty consistent wise. And then trade deadline, as we're going to speak about this later on, is you never know. You might get a boost too as well.
Yeah. Look, Jordy Mercer, former Pirates shortstop, current Sportsnet Pittsburgh analyst, joining us. Watch us on YouTube at Sportsnet Pittsburgh. Listen to us anywhere you get your podcast. Follow, subscribe. We'd love to have you guys listening, interacting with the show. All right, let's move into the topics for today, Jordy. Hey, the MLB trade line is next week, just like you said. And Mitch Keller is among top names that looking to possibly move. We don't really know yet, but we've heard the Mets, the Yankees, the Blue Jays just popped up as a possibility. There's a lot of teams that want a guy in Mitch Keller who's been very consistent for a while. Maybe not top of the rotation arm, even though, who knows? Sometimes things change. It seems like Mitch is getting better as the season keeps going on. Look, this guy's the all-time leaders in strikeouts in PNC Park history. He got that on July 2nd, but he's only 3-10 this season with a 3.48 ERA. He has done well. The team just hasn't been able to score for him, and that's, of course, as of this recording. What are the pros and cons? Let's start there to potentially trading Mitch Keller. Don't have to get too specific yet, but what are the positives? What are the negatives to moving on a guy that's been around for a while?
Well, let's start with the cons. Let's just say I probably one of the fan favorites, if not, ranked way up there, because he's the longest Pirates tenure on the roster. So he's been here the longest. He's the one that's most people are familiar with. I think he does. It's a tricky topic. It's a tricky conversation to talk about, is because you and I know this is strictly a business, and
right.
Sometimes, emotions can get in the way a little bit, but the team is looking out for what's in the best interest of the organization as a whole. I think we both agree to that. So when you get to that point in making moves and making deals, what is it going to do? What is the long-term effect? What's the short-term effect? And I think that's what the Pirates have to weigh in on this, is to figure out, this guy has been around for a long time. He's a homegrown guy. He's, like I said, the longest, Pirates tenure on a roster. He's been here for the longest. He knows a lot of faces, right? So you got to take that in effect of, what do we need? How are we going to figure this out? Is this the right guy to move if the possibility arises? Just from this plain fact of he's worn that P his whole career, so it's different, right? But then on the flip side, you got to look at some of the pros as well. You got to get back some maybe a bat, maybe that can a long-term guy that you could put, not necessarily maybe in the middle of the lineup, but somebody that can be a consistent force for you on an everyday basis. That's an everyday position player. Or you could also get back, another piece with that too as well, maybe a younger prospect that could turn out to be pretty good too. So I think the trade deadline is so tricky to me, man. It's like hit or miss. It's so hard to figure out because you can throw these scenarios like all over the place, but nobody knows until you're inside that room what they're thinking as well. So it's just a tricky situation.
I'll say I have absolutely no shame in showing my emotion here. And as a guy who knows Mitch really well, came up through the Pirate system as well, watched Mitch develop into what he is today as a Pirate. I, as a fan and a friend of Mitch Keller, would be sad to see him go. I'm just
Yeah.
going to put that out there. I think
You would
that
know
he
more
is
than
a
I would
great
too. So
yeah. I just think he's a great guy in the clubhouse to have. He is so positive. He works so hard. He's a great influence on younger pitchers. Sometimes that kind of stuff can be as valuable as other things, as
yep.
valuable as the numbers. But let's get into the numbers. He's got the 16th most innings pitched since 2021 in all of baseball. 16th. He has been so consistent and just going out there, towing the rubber every 5-6 days. And he's not always been perfect. That ERA hovering usually somewhere between the low and mid fours. Other than those first few years where he had the worst BABIP ever. I don't know if you remember that. When he first came up, his ERA was like a 7.4 and his expected ERA was like a 2.9. It was insane, the huge difference. And so those numbers can kind of sometimes throw off the beginning of his career, like how good he actually was, because he was just the unluckiest pitcher in baseball for a while. I love the guy. He's great. He's a good friend of mine, and I would be sad to see him go. And that's as a fan and as a friend. Now, as an analyst of Sportsnet Pittsburgh and the Pirates themselves, sometimes you have to make really hard decisions in order to push the team in the correct direction. Truth is, the team has a good amount of pitching. It's not that you can ever replace Mitch because this guy gives you so many innings, so many quality innings as well. And so you're going to be losing out on that. Honestly, in order to replace that, you might need two pitchers. That's how often he gets this job done. And that's a big deal. But the team needs offense. The team has struggled offensively for a while now, and this year was supposed to be better than last year, and it hasn't been. And so you got to kind of decide on that from now. Where are you going to go? Is it time to trade this guy that can you imagine if, let's say, the Pirates do trade him and then are really good next year, but then Mitch Keller isn't part of that team? That would just be weird. And I'm not saying that it's the wrong call because of that. It would just feel strange that he was here through all the difficult times where the Pirates couldn't get the job done. And let's say next year they do because the trade goes well. It would still be like, man, it just feels weird that Mitch isn't here for this. And I think he'd feel the same way, to be honest with you. Okay, so look, Mitch is.
Wait. You said it. Hang on.
Yeah.
You said it right, though. Are teams looking for, usually when at the trade deadline, when acquiring starting pitching, right? They usually have a one or two guy. Now, they usually don't have that guy because in playoffs, you got to remember it's 5-7 game series. So you need at least 4 probably potentially dudes, to start on a consistent basis in a series. And so I think you'd hit the nail on the head is because maybe Mitch isn't a 1, and maybe he's not even a 2, right? But he could still be a really good 3 or 4, and he's going to take the ball every single time, and that I think that adds a lot of value in a late August, September run when pitchers. You should know this as well. When pitchers get tired, you know what I mean, and if you can have a consistent guy in that 3 or 4 slot, that's going to toe the rubber every time and get, punching tickets like he's doing and getting that consistency like he's been doing for a while now. That's really valuable on a playoff team that needs to make a push, even not even a non-playoff team, but just a playoff team that needs to make a push to get in the playoffs.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's extremely valuable in a lot of ways. He, as a human being, is extremely valuable. He, as a pitcher, also extremely valuable. So if you're going to make that trade, I think it's got to be a good one, right? It's got to be something that really tickles your fancy, makes you think that this could be a huge addition to this team, whatever that trade ends up being. If he does get traded, this is all hypothetical. Let's say he gets traded. Heaney either gets traded or doesn't get brought back. Falter ends up, he's probably going to be in the rotation, I would assume, next year. He's had a really good year this year. But let's say everything changes and the Pirates go with the all-youth movement on the mound. Skeens, Bubba Chandler, who hasn't made his debut yet, Jared Jones, who comes back from TJ, hopefully about halfway through the year. And then you got Mike Burrows, who's been getting better this season, just had a great bounce back start against the White Sox. Hunter Barco, who is in AAA, left-hander, who is showing some really good strikeout stuff. Doesn't throw as hard as these other guys, but has really good slider and hides the ball really well. Just very intimidating presence on the mound. And let's say Braxton Ashcraft gets thrown into that mix as a guy who could either be a long guy or could be a spot starter, or, even throw him at the back end of a bullpen like we saw in the first game against the Tigers. He threw the 7th inning in that first game against the Tigers, came in after Skeens right in front of Santana and Bednar. And think about that, Jordy. Think about Skeens for 6, Ashcraft, Santana, and Bednar. As a hitter, you just kind of, hey, this was fun, guys. Thanks for the game today in Pittsburgh. We're just going to go home with this shutout. That's what it feels like, right? Do you think there's any problem or something that maybe would make you nervous about going all youth going into next year?
Yeah, I think that would be the only concern. To me, I feel like that would be the only concern. Just the fact of experience. I think that's the biggest thing. And you know how valuable experience is in the playoffs too. So if, let's just say we do make a run and they get into a situation, not only are they going to get better, but, I think having that playoff experience goes a long ways in making a deep run. But on the flip side, that's a dream scenario. What you just said, having let's just say that 1, 2, 3 punch of what you just said right there, that might be good enough for me in just general, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I feel like what you mentioned, what we talked about a little bit for Keller early on, is you need a little bit of maybe veteran experience to show how to prepare, to show how to go about the widths of the season, the grind of the season, but also you have such good young talent coming up too as well, and you don't want to, get in the way of that either. So it's a fine line. It's a fine line of going youth. It's a fine line of, calling up all those prospects up together and putting them in the rotation because they're good enough. Let's face it, they are. We know that they've been good enough for a while. We've seen it. They're going to go through their ups and downs in the big leagues like everybody else is, but I think they're going to figure it out. The more you're here, the more you're going to figure it out. So it's a fine line. It's so weird seeing how the Pirates continually to put out really good pitching, really good young pitchers that continue to produce those year in and year out. It's like this year has been the talk of Bubba. Next year could be the talk of somebody else. Next year could be talk and then now we just, our draft pick that we just got. It's crazy the amount of pitching that we have. That's excitement coming through the system. And the last thing you want to do is hold those guys back, right? And let them continue to develop, especially if they've already conquered every level, and push them up and see what they're made of. But so it's going to be interesting to see because the rotation is there, and the rotation could be something really special. We're seeing it now across the league too. The league's getting younger. We knew that, right? I think the pitching staffs are getting younger in general too as well, because kids are more developed before they even get in the system, and then their overall potential and overall just better in general, I think, with better stuff. And so they're relatively moving quicker than a lot of other or back in the day, I guess, pitchers used to, unless you get your, Max Scherzers, Verlanders, things like that. But so it's going to be fun to see like these young kids come up, and I feel like all of them blow doors too. It's crazy. All of them just throw 100. You know what I mean? And it's like, man, I'm so glad I'm not playing anymore. I'm just so glad, dude. I can sit back and watch and just enjoy the show.
It's funny because when we were playing the White Sox, the Pirates are unfortunately losing 7-1 in the eighth. And the White Sox, who have one of the worst bullpens in baseball, bring this guy out, number 61. I don't even remember his name. He looked like he was about 19 years old. And he's throwing mop-up innings, and he's throwing 99, 100 miles an hour with an absolute banger 88-mile-an-hour curveball. And it's like that's what you're dealing with now.
Yeah.
When you talk about the youth coming up and being ready. Nowadays, it's like, hey, might as well fill this bullpen full of guys that throw 100 and just kind of see if other teams can get the bat on the ball, right? I mean, it makes sense. But yeah, I remember I was the long guy for a while, and I was like a lefty throwing 92. That feels like a long guy to me, but now we're seeing that's changed quite a bit. I will say this young core coming up, it kind of reminds me of when 2017, 2018, when the Pirates we didn't have necessarily the best seasons. 2018 we ended up right at 500, a game over 500, but it was, James and Tyone, Tyler Glasnow, Trevor Williams, Chad Kuhl, me sometimes, you threw Nick Kingham in there. There were a lot of guys that were young, that were exciting, that were coming up all around the same time. And I do think that this is reminiscent of that. And we didn't see those guys get to stick together as long as I would have hoped. Musgrove, for example, he could have been, such a special Pirate. He's ends up being a special Padre, and good for him. But there's just it's reminiscent of that for me, and I do hope that they, I hope they go for it, man. Let's see what these young guys got. You think, you know what I mean?
I would love to see it. I think that's the most exciting part about it is we know what kind of stuff they have. We know what kind of dudes they are. It's just a matter of getting the opportunity. You know that. It's a matter of getting the opportunity and running with it and taking advantage of it. But I think getting up here and getting that experience, like I think everybody's ready to see Bubba Chandler, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, everybody is. Everybody sees what he's doing. So I think it's a matter of time before he gets up here. And then it's going to bring that excitement, that fans, that buzz, what Skeens did, what Garrett Cole did. I'm just throwing names out there of what, potentially starters that came in here and did. It brings that buzz. It brings the city, together for that one particular day. And it brings that excitement back to, what could be, right? I think baseball is always a hope, always looking in the future of what could be. And I think it's going to bring a little bit of a glimpse to that, what could be, especially if all those guys are healthy and throwing back to back to back. Like I said, in a 5-7 game series, you're throwing those horses out there. I mean, come on. That's exciting. That's exciting to talk about, right?
It is. It absolutely is.
Crushed it. Leah reloaded the cannon. He struck him out.
That'll be a must-watch TV.
O'Neal Cruz.
Is this real? Like this guy is a video game.
Here comes Mr. Skeens.
What we talked today has never happened.
It doesn't really compute in my brain.
This one is gone.
I'm excited.
What a comeback for the Pirates. Holy smokes.
All right, let's go from the new to the old. Look, we all know, unfortunately, the passing of Dave Parker Cobra recently. Very sad time in Pittsburgh because of what he was to the city of Pittsburgh and what he still is. Absolutely amazing that he's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame this weekend. Extremely well deserved. Our producer, Nick Belsky, who's along with us as well. Hi, Nick. Throws in a question at the end here that I refuse to answer because as much as I love talking and debating Pirates history, I refuse to rank the best Pirates outfielders in history. I won't do it. All of these guys are too good. Parker, Barry Bonds, Andrew McCutchen, Willie Stargell, Roberto Clemente, Paul Wainer, Kiki Kyler, Max Carey. Good luck making decisions on those guys. Let's just skip that. All right. Sorry, Pelsky. You're going to have to deal with that on your own. Let's just talk about Dave Parker and what he meant to the Pirates. He was an amazing player. Of course, everybody knows that. But he passed just on June 28th, 1978 NL MVP, of course. He's going to be the 43rd Pirate to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. And look, this is for me when I started learning about the history of Pittsburgh. everybody talks about Willie Stargell and Roberto Clemente and the Cobra, and I didn't know who the Cobra was. So I had to go look up, who's the Cobra, and it ends up being Dave Parker. So I go and look into his stats, and I'm like, man, this guy was so good. And he has some weird stats that you don't really expect to see. My personal favorite, 75 career triples Dave Parker had. And most of those came at the beginning of his career when he was getting like 10, 12 a year, which is pretty crazy to think about, but ends up with 2,712 hits, 339 home runs. He played for 19 seasons. And Jordy, this is my favorite part. He played at least 130 games in 14 of his 19 big league seasons. Just a guy that you can't say exactly how much he means to Pittsburgh, because I think that's individually for each person, especially people who got to watch him play live. But when you think about Dave Parker, the Cobra, Jordy, what does that make you think of?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to take you back to a little story. I didn't know much about him too as well, kind of like you were, but my dad did. And so when he passed away, he got in the Hall of Fame. I just started, had a casual conversation with him, and one thing that my dad told me that he remembers is how big he was. And I don't know if you've ever seen him before. I don't know if you've ever, I've seen him a couple of times. And that was one thing that I always remembered was how big. I mean, he was a giant. Like, you don't see a lot of bigger guys play baseball. That big of guys play baseball, right? And so that was one thing that my dad remembered for him about the most is how big of a player and how big of an impact, just a person he was when he stepped in the box. I mean, he brought that presence. And I mean, what a nickname too, by the way. I would have loved that nickname. Come on. Are you kidding me? What a great nickname. I mean, that is awesome. But like you said, man, you can't put him in the outfield of dream, because I don't even want to go down that route. Like you said, there's so many good players. The history of the Pirates is so ridiculous. I mean, the tradition and history is just amazing. But he deserved it. That's all I know is he deserved it. He needed to get in. He should have been in a long time ago, in my opinion. But it's really, I think we need to celebrate it more than anything. Celebrate him, who he was, what he made an impact in this organization. And he's always going to remember it as the Cobra here, and is always going to remember, being that stature of a person that made a tremendous impact on the city and on the organization.
Yeah, I got to meet him a few times throughout my Pirates career. He was, he's an amazing guy. He one of the things that I always enjoyed is when you hear stories about when he was playing, he was always the guy that was, getting in people's ears. He's always talking a little bit, making sure people were never quite comfortable. You never knew if he was joking or not. One of those guys. And he was like that still when I met him. And first time I met him, and he says something about, hey, you need to get your front side, closed a little bit earlier. And I'm like, and then he starts laughing, he's like, I don't even watch you pitch, dude. Come on. He reminds me of a different time in baseball, right? That the big presence, he used it as an intimidation factor in the box, on the field. I always loved to hear he won the All-Star Game MVP because of his defense, which is just one of the weirder things you're ever going to see. Especially, I don't think it would happen nowadays, no matter what. You could see somebody make 8 diving plays in the All-Star Game. They'd be like, no, Kyle Schwarber hit a homer, so that's going to be it.
No way. That's right.
But I think that he's one of those guys that is, you can't take him away when you talk about the best Pirates teams in history, that run in the 70s where the Pirates were just a force to be afraid of. He was a big part of that. And so when it comes down to it, I absolutely love that, he gets to be thrown into the Hall of Fame. He absolutely deserves it. I think it took too long, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. He's going in now. And I hope that he's up there watching and he's smiling and he's, talking to St. Peter, making St. Peter like, is he joking or not? I don't know. He's getting under my skin a little bit. But hey, a great guy that couldn't be happier for. And look, when we look back at Pirates history, he's always going to be right there, one of those guys at the top. You don't got to put a ranking on it for that. We all know that, right, Jordy?
That's right. I mean, I'm sitting here just looking at his stats again, and he's 300 hits, basically 300 hits away from 3,000. You know what I mean? Like almost 350 homers, like you just mentioned, a 290 career batting average, 810 OPS. Like those stats today that people can relate to, right? Because we have so many of those analytical stats. But the fact that he played 19 seasons, though, and like you mentioned, 130 of those for 14. God, man. I mean, go ahead and pencil him in the lineup every day, right? I mean, just
every day.
Well, there we go. Every day. That would be awesome as a manager to feel every day. I know this dude's playing, and I know he's going to produce.
I think if you tried to platoon the Cobra, he'd probably just pick the manager up over his head and just toss him like a sack of potatoes. Like, nah, dude, I don't care if it's a lefty, I'm hitting.
Or the lineup card, just rip the lineup card.
Yeah, exactly.
Exclusive interviews.
It was all that and more.
Insights.
He's doing everything right now.
And game previews.
Guys that are great can channel that.
Pirates Game Day Live, 30 minutes before every game on Sportsnet Pittsburgh. Presented by Allegheny Health Network.
All right, let's move on. Something a little bit different here. Pirates to look at in the second half. Guys that we want to focus on. I'm curious to see if we're going to have some similar answers here or how different they're going to be. We basically each chose two. We have our number one that we want to watch, and then we have our honorable mention player that we are also going to be watching. But this is a podcast, and we can't list the entire team. So we're going to start with two. Let's start with our honorable mentions. How about that? We'll go backwards.
Okay.
I'm going to start. My honorable mention is Mike Burrows. And the reason that I have Mike Burrows is because he's a guy that we saw, at one start last year, and then he comes out this year and he wasn't getting the opportunities that I thought he would get at the beginning of the season. But once he got here, he has been pretty solid. He's had some bad starts. He's had some good starts. But what it comes down for me is when you watch him pitch, he has devastating stuff. If he's the kind of guy that, Paul Skeens came up and his command was polished immediately, but that's so rare. Most guys need some time to figure out how their pitches work against big league hitters specifically. And I think Mike Burrows is going through that because some of his starts, he is lights out because his fastball command is on. And honestly, for me, that's the only kicker for him. He doesn't have that big, devastating fastball. What he has are all the pitches around it that make it so that the fastball will play up if he can command it well. He's a guy I want to watch. He's got maybe, when you talk about best individual pitch by any Pirates pitcher, his changeup is right up there at the top of the list.
No doubt.
It's absolutely incredible. He gets a ton of whiff on it. And when you watch people whiff, it's my favorite. It's the kind of changeup that people take good swings at, right? Because they're in their mind, they're right on it. And then they miss it by like a foot and a half, and they don't even know why they missed it, right? That's, for me, the sign of a better changeup than guys who are way out in front because they recognized it eventually. People don't recognize it at all. And so for me, Mike Burrows just had his last start against the White Sox. He had a good bounce back start after giving up 6 the start before in Minnesota. For me, definitely a guy I'm going to be keeping my eye on, but not my number one. Jordy, who's your honorable mention for this?
So I went pitching, honorable mention, and I went position player to watch. So my pitching honorable mention guy is going to be Braxton Ashcraft because I'm going to tell you why. Is his stuff in the bullpen, we've already seen it, right? It's incredible. I think the Pirates are trying to figure out where he is going to fit in because he's going to fit in somewhere. We know that. Where is he going to fit in? I can see him potentially being a closer. I can potentially being a setup, potentially being a starter. I mean, I think there's a lot to like in his repertoire, as you would say, and his demeanor. See, his demeanor for a back end is like fits the mold. I mean, it's like, I'm coming
Right.
at you. Here it comes. Get ready, hit it. If not, I'm going to throw another one. Get ready, hit it. I'm coming at you. And don't look at me the wrong way either. Something like that. So that demeanor is there in the bullpen. You know that. You got to have that in the bullpen. So, but he has got the body. He's got like the potential to be a pretty good starter too. Like I can see him molding into that guy. It's going to be obviously a little bit more wear and tear, but I think they're just trying to figure out, and this is why I mentioned him, is they're just trying to figure out where to put him, where would be a good spot for him, because I can see a lot of different spots him being in that could potentially be really, really beneficial for the Pirates and for himself too, because having him, I'm playing both sides here. Having him in the bullpen would be just tremendous, back in especially, or having him as like we mentioned, those young kids, putting him in the mix with Jared Jones and Bubba Chandler and Paul Skeens. Holy Moses, that could be really good. So I don't know, that's why it's so interesting for me to watch him pitch and to see how he's getting the experience right now in the back end. Cause I think anytime we have the lead or anytime that it's a close game, he's getting his name called quite a bit in that 6th, 7th area, sometimes even the 8th area. So it's going to be interesting to see him grow as a pitcher and as a player, and interesting to see what the Pirates do with him and potentially putting him in that fit of where he's going to be best, succeed as a player and as a person that's going to help the organization.
I'll name you one starter in recent memory who started as a bullpen pitcher and made his way to the rotation. It's worked out pretty well. His name is Garrett Crochet. And Ashcraft reminds me of a right-handed Garrett Crochet. I could see him ending up being a guy who does make it to the rotation and just keeps throwing that fastball, man. The fastball right now doesn't have as much whiff as you'd like, but the breaking balls do. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide. We know he's going to be here. It's just where they're going to put him.
No
That's
doubt.
a good problem.
That's right.
All right, so I'll go with my number one, who I'm watching for the rest of the season, and Michael McHenry would be stoked. Mine is Henry Davis. Henry Davis, the number one most important thing here is that his defense is spectacular. So when he came up, that was the question. Is the defense going to be there? Well, the defense is there. Now, the hitting tool that everybody thought was you can't miss on that, turns out that has not been here yet. So as a Pirates executive, you look at a guy like Henry Davis, you still got to see the potential that's there. He's still built like a Mack truck. He's going to be able to take a bunch of punishment behind the plate. He's going to be durable. He's a strong kid. He's smart. He clearly, once he puts his mind to something, can get it done. And for that was the defense that he vastly improved over the last year and a half. The question is, can he do the same with the offense? I'm thinking maybe this offseason, if he doesn't start to really show it this year, maybe this offseason he'll put the same whatever ridiculous work he put into his defense to get it immediately so much better into the offense. Maybe that's something he can do. I don't know. But the thing that I'm looking at is since the beginning of July 1st, Henry Davis is hitting 107. Okay, he's hitting 107. That is not good, obviously. However, his exit velocity from the beginning of the season to July 1st was 86 miles an hour. Since July 1st, it's 92 miles an hour. Even though he's not getting the hits, he is hitting the ball a lot better, more consistently. That's a really good sign for me. Two things about Henry Davis for me to keep an eye on. One, his ability to hit the ball in the zones that he hits well. I think that a lot of times hitters try to be too well-rounded, if that makes sense. I don't think you have to necessarily learn how to be able to hit a fastball up and in if that's not a pitch that you're going to get too well consistently. That's a pitch you learn to fight off with 2 strikes maybe, but early in the count, just never swing at it. That's much easier said than done. But if he can work on that approach, make sure that he's always looking for pitches on the outer half of the plate early in at bats, that's where he can get his arms extended. He always does damage out there. And in the first game against Detroit, he hit 2 laser beams, one to third, one to center, and he got robbed both times. So he's had some bad luck. The exit velocity is up. And the defense is great. His pitch calling is awesome. And to just be honest, Joey Bart has really struggled at the plate this year. And so I think Henry Davis is probably going to start to continue. We've been seeing him get more and more at bats, more games. I think that may continue because he is still the Pirates 1-1 after all. So you want to get as much as you can from him. That's my guy to watch for the rest of the season. Henry Davis. Jordy, who is your number one guy you want to watch?
So I went back and forth a little bit because I like Nicky Gonzalez and I like Spencer Horwitz, but I'm going to go with Spencer Horwitz because the reason why I'm going with Spencer Horwitz is we traded him for a reason. Okay. So we need to see what he's going to be in the long run, production wise, what he is going to do for us long term wise. We traded him for a reason. We wanted him to get a better bat in the lineup. We wanted him to get more production throughout our lineup. He's not real experienced. He's never really got a fair shot, in my opinion, to be an everyday player. But I think, time will tell if he can continue to get the opportunity. And I hope he can be a mainstay at, first base. If not, we got to find another position for him. I think he could probably play some outfield too. But I think he is my guy to watch because I want to see him over the course of a season, the course of a long period of time, get those consistent at-bats, figure out how to hit a little bit better against lefties, be that everyday guy, though, and that opportunity arises for him. So I hope he gets that chance, and I hope he produces like we think he might. We know that's the capability of doing it, but just the opportunity arises for that situation.
Yeah, 3 hits in the first game against Detroit at the top of the lineup. He's played really good defense at first too recently. I think that is helpful as well because first basemen often on defense are kind of overlooked. But if you got a good first baseman who can pick it, he can scoop it. I mean, as a shortstop, that's a good feeling, right?
Yes.
All right. So last thing we got going here, we've got some guys that are very young that are looking to maybe make their way up to the big leagues here soon. Adam Frazier was just traded for Cam Devanney. Cam Devanney is, he was with the Royals. He's 28 years old, which is a little bit older than you'd like to see a guy. But in AAA, he's hitting well. He's got 18 home runs as of the point of doing this podcast. He's played 71 games. Now with the Pirates, he's 2 for 7 since he came over. For me, it's interesting because you're kind of going from a guy in IKF who has been the shortstop for the Pirates this year and has done a very good job defensively and offensively. He's been, really good in the bottom of the lineup. Cam Devanney is the guy that you're looking for the upside, right? IKF is Mr. Consistency. Cam Devanney would probably be somebody that you'd be looking for. Hey, we know that the ceiling is higher than IKF, but also the floor is much lower. So how can we get him to that ceiling? And a lot of that is the power numbers. The Pirates have only gotten 2 home runs out of the shortstop position this year. If they can get some more power out of that position in the future, that would be nice. This is IKF's last year on contract with the Pirates. Who knows what the future is with him and the club? But for now, you got Cam Devanney as an interesting guy that they traded for. Probably, I would guess, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Jordy, as a guy that they're looking as maybe he'll do something. Maybe they see something that they think they're going to be able to help his swing be more consistent or whatever it is. But as a shortstop yourself, who had some pop, you had some pop, Jordy.
A little bit of
what
pop,
does that mean
bit.
as a team? If you can fill that out, yeah.
Listen, the numbers are there, right? I mean, we're seeing those numbers that he's putting up in AAA that are kind of like a little bit of a joke for a shortstop, I think. I mean, hitting 18 homers and 55 ribs. I mean, my goodness. I mean, this dude can hit, right? I think that the thing for, like you said, is he a long-term guy? Is he more of a stopgap guy? What is he, right? What is the opportunity arises? Why hasn't he got the opportunity earlier in his career or for a longer period of time, whatever it might be? But I do like the trade. I mean, I love Fraze to death, but long-term wise, I think this guy fits more of our mold and what we're trying to do and get more depth in the system. And like you said, IKF, who knows what's going to happen there. But why not give this dude a shot and see what happens? I mean, I don't know. I don't know why he hasn't succeeded in the first place, but to be able to get him opportunity with those numbers that he's putting up is going to be awesome. I think being 28 years old is a little bit, still young, but young. I don't know, quite young enough. Real young for this guy, I guess you'd say. I don't know. It's weird. It's kind of weird to say that because being 28 is like, is that old now? Like, what are we doing, right?
I think that's old.
I don't know.
Yeah,
right. So I think giving this guy an opportunity, a shot, who knows what's going to happen coming up here in the next couple of weeks, and but the numbers, this dude can hit. So it's a matter of shortening his swing up, maybe figuring out how to be more consistent at the big league level, and moving on from there. But I like him. I mean, I like the numbers on paper. You know what I mean? For a shortstop too, I think that's the biggest thing. Is now we're seeing guys in the middle lineup that produce, or guys in the middle of the diamond that really produce, and looks like he can be another one that's one of those guys in the middle that can still put up some really good numbers and play a premier position, I should say.
And two guys that the Pirates are still kind of, we haven't really seen much. Actually, we've seen none out of this year, but we saw last year. Billy Cook added at the deadline. Nick Yorke added at the deadline last year. Guys who we were hoping to see more of this year, but we haven't seen them really at all. Nick Yorke, for me, is the more interesting candidate. I like Billy Cook. I think he's a good athlete. I like that he can play first base and the outfield and play them both really well. I think that's very unique. We want to see more of the power. His power really took a dive this season, only 5 home runs so far this year. But Nick Yorke, on the other hand, for me, he's a guy that we like to see. He's got a lot high barrel rate. He hits the ball on a line a lot. Hard hit percentage is high. And for me, that's the kind of guy that I like to put in the lineup. But the problem is that now you got Nick Gonzalez pretty much cemented himself at second base. And so Nick Yorke's probably going to have to move to the outfield in order to get consistent at bats. I'm okay with that, but I would love to see maybe some more offensive production. 276 home runs in AAA this year, but still a guy that I find very interesting. Jordy, are either of those two guys, they pique your interest, kind of something that you want to keep your eye on?
Yeah, I mean, I think Nick Yorke is my guy. I mean, I think you nailed it. I would love to see him come up and get consistent at bats. We traded him for a reason too. I think he's got an opportunity to be, I don't know, necessarily have to be like an impact bat, but he can hit though. I mean, he can hit. He's always hit. So I think having him up there, now that what Nicky G's doing, I don't think you can even go down that route anymore, to be honest with you. I think he's settled in nicely and played very, very well. But like you said, there could be some opportunities, at the corner outfield position that he could stick in to be just a guy that, if you need a spark real fast, every team or every club I feel like needs those guys. And so to be a spark, to be somebody like that can jump in and help this team. He's a guy that I think needs an opportunity. I think that's the biggest thing is hasn't had a full opportunity. Even with Boston, he never really got an opportunity to as well. So having an opportunity to get in, be not necessarily an everyday player, but getting quite a few bats a week might bring a spark to this lineup. Might bring something that, who knows, you might have a hidden gem there that could be because he's learning more experience as he goes. He's getting more at bats as he goes. It's just a matter of time of getting at the big league level and finding that consistency. We know how hard it is to get to the big leagues, right? So once you get there. But to find that consistency is extremely hard because everybody knows everything about. They know what kind of gum you chew now, I feel like, and everything you do, because there's cameras on you nonstop. There's all these stats, statistics about you, analytics about you. There's everything about you. So it's a matter of just adjusting on the fly and being able to do, what he can do better day in and day out when guys figure out his weakness. And I think that's a lot for a lot of young players, but he just hasn't found that consistent plan of playing a lot every day yet. Now down there he is, but up here at the big league level, that's where he needs to find that consistency in those consistent bats. But he's got a chance to be pretty good. I mean, his track record shows.
That's very true. Jordy, always great insight, man. So happy to have you here on Bucs Bounty. I'm going to end this with one final question, okay? And this is called the humble brag question. What's the furthest home run you ever hit?
466. Patrick Corbin, off Patrick Corbin in Arizona. So I told you this before, but the roof was closed. They opened. I don't know if people are familiar, but they have these windows that rotate like this, and so they opened the windows up that was just under the roof. And I remember this day. I still remember. Always will for some reason. I was setting the shortstop. The roof closed. There ain't a lick of wind anywhere, right? I mean, it's closed. We're covered, and my jersey whipping because those windows were open. That's the jet stream that was flying out of that thing. I had to have some help to get it that far. So I definitely have the wind helping me on that situation, but I'll take it though. I never hit one even that close before. And that was fun. That was when everything's like on time, perfect. And you actually get a hold of one. You're like, oh my, that's what normally hit them. So that was fun.
Awesome. Well, all right, Jordy, thanks for joining us on Bucs Bounty. And thank you, all of you. You can watch us on YouTube at Sportsnet Pittsburgh. Please subscribe, follow. We love to have you with us. We love talking Buccos, and we would love to have you join us into this conversation. You can watch us or listen to us on anywhere you get your podcast, but go ahead and watch on YouTube so you can see Jordy's pretty face. My name is Stephen Brault. Jordy Mercer joins us, and Nick Belsky, our producer, as well along for the ride. From Sportsnet Pittsburgh, thank you for joining us here on Bucs Bounty, and we will see you next week.